Dae-ho had always lived in the frequency of silence. As the city's most unassuming repairman, he moved through the high rises of Seoul, fixing broken wires and leaking pipes, his face hidden behind a simple mask and a cap pulled low. To the world, he was a ghost of the working class, but his hands, calloused and steady, held a different history. Years ago, they had held a rifle for the state's most elite black ops unit. More importantly, they had held the hand of Rana, the woman who had promised him a life away from the blood. But the state doesn't let its monsters go so easily. When a botched political cover-up required a scapegoat, they didn't just frame him, they executed the only light he had left. Rana was murdered in their small apartment, while Dae-ho was out buying her favorite lilies. They left him with nothing but a cold floor and a burning vow, not realizing that by killing the woman he loved, they had accidentally untethered the most dangerous man in Asia. The first step of his descent back into the darkness began in the rain-slicked alleyways of the Gangnam district. Dae-ho stood before a heavy iron door, the entrance to an underground gambling den run by the men who had pulled the trigger. He wasn't there to fix the plumbing this time. As he stepped inside, the air grew thick with the scent of cheap tobacco and impending violence. 6 armed guards moved toward the quiet repairman, laughing at his tool bag. Dae-ho didn't say a word. In a blur of motion that defied the human eye, he used a simple flathead screwdriver to disable the first 3 men before they could even unholster their weapons. He moved like a shadow, a lethal dance of precision and rage that left the room in a stunned, bloody silence. He wasn't just looking for names. He was sending a message that the tiger was no longer sleeping. As he reached the inner sanctum, he found the man known as the Butcher, the one who had coordinated the hit on his apartment. The Butcher sat frozen, his hand reaching for a panic button that was no longer there. Dae-ho leaned in, his voice a low, terrifying whisper that sounded like grinding stones. He didn't ask for mercy, he offered a trade. He wanted the location of the memory card that held the evidence of the political assassination, the So paper. The Butcher trembled, realizing that the man standing over him wasn't just a vigilante. He was the ghost of every mission the government had ever tried to hide. Just as the information was about to spill, the high-pitched whistle of a sniper's bullet shattered the window, missing Dae-ho's head by a fraction of an inch. Before we see how Dae-ho survives this trap, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. If you're enjoying this transformation of the quiet repairman, give this video a like and share it with your fellow K-drama fans. Also, comment below with your favorite action hero trope. Is it the silent protector or the vengeful ghost? Let's get back to the shadows. Dae-ho dived behind a heavy mahogany desk as a second round of gunfire shredded the room. He realized then that he wasn't just fighting the mob, he was fighting a shadow government that had been watching him since the day he retired. He managed to escape through a ventilation shaft, but as he emerged onto the rooftop, he found himself surrounded by a tactical team wearing the same insignia he used to wear on his own shoulder. His old commander, a man who had taught him to kill without a conscience, stood in the center of the ring. He offered Dae-ho a choice: hand over the evidence he didn't even have yet, or watch as the city's police force branded him the most wanted terrorist in Korea. Dae-ho looked at the city lights, thinking of Rana's lilies, and realized he would have to become a monster to defeat the ones who made him. To disappear, Dae-ho had to orchestrate his own capture. He allowed the police to take him, knowing that the only way to reach the men at the top was to start at the bottom, Gucheon Prison. Inside those walls, he wasn't Dae-ho the repairman, he was Inmate 2045. The prison was a vertical ecosystem of corruption, where the guards were bought by the 3 VIPs, the very politicians who had signed Rana's death warrant. They expected a broken man they could bully into silence. Instead, they found a wolf in a sheep's jumpsuit. On his first night, the prison's most feared gang leader tried to take his rations. Dae-ho didn't fight back with fists. He used a single pressure point on the man's neck that caused him to collapse in a silent seizure. The rumor began to spread like wildfire. The new guy wasn't a lawyer or a thief. He was the legendary Big Mouse, the Phantom King of the underworld. Dae-ho leaned into the lie. If they wanted a demon, he would give them one. He began to systematically dismantle the prison's power structure from within solitary confinement, using a network of inmates who saw him as their only hope for justice. He promised them their freedom in exchange for their eyes and ears. Through a series of coded tarot cards smuggled in through the laundry, he began to coordinate hits on the political infrastructure outside, making it look like Big Mouse was everywhere at once. The warden, a man who thrived on fear, found himself terrified of his own prisoner. One evening, the warden entered Dae-ho's cell to demand the return of the stolen billions, only to find Dae-ho sitting calmly in the dark, holding a photo of the warden's own family. The psychological warfare was working, but the cost was high. His only link to the outside world was Rana, a nurse he had met briefly during his Repairman days, who was now risking her life to smuggle him the medical files that proved the prison was being used for illegal human experimentation. Rana was the only person who knew the truth, that Dae-ho was innocent, but she was also the biggest target. As the VIPs realized they couldn't break Dae-ho inside, they turned their sights on her. One night, while Rana was walking to her car after a long shift, she noticed the streetlights flickering out one by one. A black van slid to a halt beside her, and as the door opened, she saw the cold, familiar face of the man who had ordered the hit on Rana. Back in the prison, Dae-ho felt the shift in the air before the guards even arrived. He knew the top dog title came with a heavy price. The VIPs had grown desperate. They didn't want the money anymore. They wanted his head. They bribed a psychopathic inmate, a man with no sense of pain, to finish the job during the midnight shift. Dae-ho was trapped in his cell, the electronic locks disabled by a traitorous guard. As the giant stepped into the small room with a sharpened shank, Dae-ho didn't reach for a weapon. He stood up, his eyes cold and empty, and welcomed the monster home. The fight was silent and brutal, a collision of raw strength and professional lethality. But as Dae-ho stood over the fallen body of his attacker, he heard the prison intercom crackle to life with a message meant only for him. "We have the nurse." Dae-ho's heart, which he thought he had turned to stone, fractured. He realized that being the most feared top dog was useless if he couldn't protect the one person who still saw his humanity. He had to break out, but Guchan Prison was a fortress designed by the very people he was trying to kill. He had spent months learning the blueprints, the guard rotations, and the blind spots of the cameras. He triggered a riot, using the very chaos he had cultivated to mask his movements. In the middle of the smoke and the shouting, he slipped into the shadows of the infirmary, heading for the service elevator. But as the doors opened, he found himself staring into the barrel of a shotgun held by his cellmate, Jerry, the only man he thought he could trust. Make sure you're still with me. This story is about to take a turn you won't believe. Like this video if you didn't see that betrayal coming, and share this with a friend who loves a good plot twist. Does Dae-ho make it out, or is this the end of the Big Mouse? Jerry's hand didn't shake. He revealed that he was never a fan. He was a sleeper agent for the newspaper president, Ji-hoon. The Big Mouse persona was a cage they had built for Dae-ho, a way to keep him occupied while they moved the pieces on the board. But Dae-ho just smiled, a terrifying sight in the dim red emergency lights. He revealed that he had known Jerry was a mole since the 3rd week. He had fed Jerry false information, leading the real villains into a trap of his own making. As the prison alarms blared, Dae-ho moved with a speed that Jerry couldn't track, disarming him and leaving him unconscious before the elevator reached the ground floor. Dae-ho emerged into the night air, a free man and a hunted animal all at once. He tracked Anna to a construction site on the outskirts of the city, a place where many accidents happened. He found her tied to a chair atop a half-finished skyscraper, the wind howling through the steel beams. Park Kwon-soo, the man who had started this all, stood there holding a lighter over a pool of gasoline. He wanted the Seo paper, the final evidence that would end his career. Dae-ho stepped into the light, his repairman's jacket stained with prison blood. He didn't offer the paper. He offered a choice. Let the girl go and die quickly, or stay and find out why the elite units used to call him the Reaper. Park Kwon-soo laughed, signaling his snipers to fire, but the red dots on Dae-ho's chest suddenly shifted to Park's own guards. Dae-ho had used the Big Mouse influence to buy the very snipers Park had hired. The betrayal was absolute. Within seconds, the rooftop was cleared of enemies, leaving only Dae-ho and the man who had destroyed his life. But as Dae-ho moved to untie Anna, a hidden explosive triggered. The floor beneath them buckled, and for a moment, time stood still. Dae-ho dived, catching Anna's hand as she slipped toward the edge, his other hand gripping a rusted rebar. Below them was a 300-foot drop into the darkness of Seoul. Above them, the building was beginning to groan and collapse. Park Kwon-soo, pinned under a fallen beam, begged for help, promising Dae-ho the world. Dae-ho looked at the man, then at the terrified girl in his hand, and made the hardest decision of his life. He pulled Anna up, shielding her with his body as the roof gave way. They tumbled through the floors, a chaotic descent of dust and steel. When Dae-ho finally opened his eyes, he was covered in debris, his arm shattered and his vision blurred. He found Anna nearby, shaken but alive. He had saved her, but the mission wasn't over. He crawled through the wreckage to find Park Kwon-soo's body, but the spot where the politician had been pinned was empty. Only a single tarot card remained in the dust, the Tower card flipped upside down. It was a message from the real Big Mouse, the one who had been watching from the beginning and the one who had just saved Dae-ho's life to ensure the game continued. Dae-ho realized then that he was no longer just a man seeking revenge, he was a piece in a much larger, much deadlier game. He took Anna to a safe house, a small apartment filled with lilies he had arranged weeks ago, just in case. He told her to stay hidden, to change her name, and to never look back. He was going back into the heart of the city, not as a repairman and not as a prisoner, but as the ghost the state feared most. He would find the real Big Mouse, and he would finish the war that started in his living room. As he walked into the rain, his silhouette fading into the neon lights, a phone in his pocket buzzed with a message from an unknown number. The trial starts tomorrow. Don't be late. The next morning, the city of Seoul awoke to a live broadcast that had hijacked every screen from Gangnam to Incheon. It was Dae-ho, standing in front of the National Assembly, holding the Seo paper in one hand and a detonator in the other. He wasn't there to blow up the building. He was there to blow up the truth. He began to read the names, the judges, the CEOs, the ministers, everyone who had built their mansions on the bodies of the innocent. The police surrounded him, hundreds of rifles aimed at his heart. But Dae-ho didn't flinch. He looked directly into the camera, his eyes burning with the memory of Rana, and said the words that would change Korea forever. The truth doesn't need a win rate, it just needs a voice. As the authorities moved in, a massive explosion rocked the nearby district. Not a bomb, but a data breach that released every secret file in the government's archives simultaneously. The real Big Mouse had made his move, using Dae-ho as the ultimate distraction. In the chaos, Dae-ho vanished once more, leaving only his repairman's cap on the steps of the assembly. He had fulfilled his promise to Rana, but at the cost of becoming a permanent shadow. He was the world's most feared assassin, not because he killed for money, but because he killed for a love that the world tried to erase. And as he watched the sunrise from a distant pier, he felt a hand on his shoulder, a touch so familiar that it made his breath catch.